Welcome to the ANOC Social Media Workshop. My name is Gustavo Harada and I'll be your host for today's workshop. For a quick introduction, I have worked for 12 years for the Brazilian Olympic Committee, leading the Olympic delegation preparations from Vancouver 2010 to Pyeongchang 2018. And in 2019, I joined ANOC to support the delivery of the ANOC Row Beach Games and its different projects and initiatives. And it is a great pleasure for me to be hosting you, the NOCs of the world, in today's event. Before we start, I just would like to go through some housekeeping messages. First, this workshop is being recorded and will be made publicly available for further viewing. Please keep your microphones on mute and turn off your cameras to reduce your bandwidth consumption. The workshop will be presented in English, and Spanish and French translations are available. You can just click on the globe icon and select your preferred language. Please feel free to use the chat to post any comment during the presentation. And please post your questions to the presenters on the chat, and we will read them out at the end of each section. When posting a question, please write your name and the organization that you're representing. So we hope you enjoy the workshop. Now I pass the floor to Ms. Gunilla Lindberg, ANOC Secretary General, for the opening remarks. Gunilla, the floor is yours.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just unmuting myself. Hello, everyone. My name is Gunilla Lindberg. I'm the Secretary General of the Association of the National Olympic Committees, ANOC, which is the umbrella organization of all 206 NOCs in the world. It's my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to this first web seminar on social media. And I can tell you, we are actually the whole world here. So I can say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, because we have all the continents with us. We have 115 NOCs. We have 270 participants, and we have 4 continental organizations. As we said, this is the first seminar ever we will put on, and we are doing this because we have realized there's a big need from many NOCs to improve their social media and to promote your NOCs and to stay in contact. And what is better to do that than cooperate and have a good introduction to this very interesting topic. And with this word, Gustav, I give the floor back to you, because there are other people who are going to speak. Enjoy the day, learn a lot, and chat with each other and take good things from this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gunilla. So once again, welcome to the first ANOC Social Media Workshop. I would like to thank you all for your participation in today's session. We know very well that the NOCs are really busy in their final preparations for Tokyo 2020, which will likely be the most challenging games in recent history. But we're glad to have more than 217 registered participants, as Gunilla mentioned, in this event, and over 115 NOCs plus the continental associations. All the challenges that are presented to the NOCs for Tokyo 2020 and the consequent blocking of foreign spectators will likely mean that the games will be even more consumed by digital devices. The Olympic fans who lost their possibility to be in Tokyo are still passionate about the games and will be tuned in to consume the game's content. So it's a potential opportunity for the NOCs to be the source of this content, increasing its number of followers, interactions, likes, etc., potentially leaving the games with a broader reach on social media. ANOC has decided to develop this social media program after a recommendation from the ANOC Marketing Commission, chaired by USOPC President Ms. Suzanne Dion. And from which today we have ANOC Romania President, Mr. Mohai Covaliu, also a member of the Commission, and who is registered to join us in this workshop. When the Marketing Commission was discussing NOC's new sources of revenue, it was clear to all that the member NOCs had first to prepare their base ground to go to market to search for sponsors. And part of this preparation meant having a solid social media performance, not only meaning numbers of followers and interactions, but also positive messages, building the image of the NOCs among its community, making the NOC brand attractive for future sponsors to get their own brands associated to, besides creating social media products to be sold to the partners. So ANOC's first step was to develop the NOC social media performance study in 2020 in partnership with digital marketing agency Redtorch, who are providing the great speakers of today's workshop. The study showed how the NOCs of the world were performing on 4 different platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. And there were many interesting findings, taking different metrics into account. The study showed that all NOCs combined had a total reach of 28.4 million followers, considering all 4 platforms. Taking into account that more than 3 billion people consume an edition of the Summer Olympic Games, ANOC believes that there's a great opportunity for growth. In order to allow the NOC communities to keep measuring their performance on social media, ANOC, once again, through the partnership with Redtorch, created the ANOC social media dashboard. The tool is available on the ANOC website under the NOC session and is built with the same parameters as the initial study, allowing continental performance measuring, comparing the NOCs with each other, analyze monthly performance, or views engagements, overall ranking, etc. But in order to support the increase of the NOC performance on social media, ANOC created 3 different initiatives. Number 1 is the ANOC Social Media Handbook, distributed to all NOCs last week, now available in English, but being translated into Spanish and French. It contains the necessary theory for building a winning performance on social media. Number 2 is the ANOC Social Media Workshop that we find ourselves today, where industry professionals will share their best experience with the NOCs. There will be 2 workshops, one today before Tokyo 2020 and one before Beijing 2022. And lastly, the ANOC social media webinars, which will be focused on NOC exchange of experience on specific topics, with the peer NOC sharing how they plan to execute certain topics related to social media, creating a positive environment for interaction and exchange. Here, I take the opportunity to thank the NOCs of Botswana, Fiji, Brazil, Romania, Jordan, and Azerbaijan, who have engaged with us for the development of the initiative so far. To start the project, we have invited 1 NOC per continent, plus Azerbaijan, who voluntarily reached us to offer support. And ANOC will continue to engage different NOCs for the future actions as well. If you would like to take part, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. In ANOC's strategic review questionnaire sent to all NOCs earlier this year, it was clear that the NOCs envisioned 2 key things to be facilitated by ANOC. Number 1, support the NOCs on their digital transformation process, by which here I thank Mr. Brian Lewis, president of the Trinidad and Tobago NOC, who was very emphatic on the importance of this topic for the NOCs and who is also registered to join us today in this workshop. Number 2, create a positive environment and opportunities for the NOCs to exchange experience among themselves and learn from each other. We hope to fulfill these 2 requirements from the ANOC's members with the Digital Accelerator program, in which social media workshop is part of. And to conclude my intervention and give the floor to the speakers, I'd just like to add that it's part of the NOC family responsibility to support the delivery of Agenda 2020+5 adopted by the IOC earlier this year. Recommendation number 8 of the IOC new strategic agenda says that the Olympic movement must grow digital engagement with people. And that's exactly what we aim to reach with this project, together with all 206 NOCs of the world, plus the continental associations. We hope that in 5 years' time, our social media dashboard will show that the Olympic movement that the NOC family did its part in increasing the digital connection with the movement, with the people from all 206 member countries. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Chris Argyle, Strategy Director of Redtorch. Chris has more than 11 years of experience working in social media and digital within the industry. His latest experience includes the projects with global rights holders, such as the IOC's Athlete 365 platform, and also Longines. Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gustavo. And thank you everyone for attending. And I was about to introduce myself, but Gustavo, you did such a good job that I don't need to, so thank you for that. So I'm just gonna share my screen with you. Share. Okay, so I hope everyone can see that. No?
Yep, all good.
Okay, that's a good start. So yes, as Gustavo said, my name's Chris. I'm the strategy director at Redtorch. So before we move into the workshop, I'll give you a little introduction to Redtorch and our team presenting today. So in terms of who Redtorch are, we're based out of London. We're a multi-award-winning marketing agency trusted by some of the biggest brands in sport. We work with ANOC, we work with the International Olympic Committee, the International Equestrian Federation, to commercial rights holders and global brands. And we do that really to enable them to understand, grow and engage with their digital audiences worldwide. So the team we've assembled for you today, that I'm hoping will offer you all some value in some way, is Matt, who's our creative director, who looks after all the creative output in the agency, who's had a vast amount of experience in sports and the brand world, previously worked with Adidas, Puma, and the English Premier League. And we've got Emma, our social media manager, who's a guru on all things social media. I think Emma currently oversees probably over 25 plus social media channels for a range of large international sports organizations and brands. And lastly, we have Ollie, who's head of research and insights and was behind the first phase of the ANOC social media research and is the brains behind all our research projects. So that's the team who will all bring a different perspective to today's presentation. We will endeavour to answer all your questions today. Just to note, in terms of the workshop, it's not aimed at advanced NOCs who have maybe 15 people working on their social media, because we have to cater for everyone as much as we can with this. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Emma, our social media guru, who's going to kick things off.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma, as Chris said, and I'm going to kick off the workshop with the importance of having a social media strategy. So first off, what is a social media strategy? A social strategy is a type of content strategy that focuses solely on your NOC's social media platforms, whilst a content strategy is the continuous process of turning your NOC's objectives and goals into a plan, and that uses different types of content as the primary tactic to achieve those goals. So this means that your social media strategy would fall underneath your overall content strategy. Yep. So why do you need a social media strategy? By having a social media strategy, it ensures that your NOC is telling the right stories, connecting with the right audience, supporting your athletes, growing meaningful content, and growing awareness. So the purpose of a specific social media strategy is to focus the following in a clear direction: your NOC content, ideas, messaging, resources, goals, and objectives. And by doing this, it allows consistency when you're planning and provide your NOC with a clear path to success. And it ensures that you'll create the right content for your specific NOC. So what does a successful social media strategy look like? Essentially, it will consider carefully all of the objectives of your NOC and how best to achieve them through specific and achievable content. That's the main part, making sure that everything you do is always achievable. It will provide the foundation for effective communication to athletes, fans, and stakeholders. It will guide the creation and the sharing of your content while growing your audiences, and attract new athletes and generate athlete overall satisfaction. So how do you create a social media strategy? So for this point, we always fall back to what would be our content strategy. So as our social strategy sits under the overall content strategy, you always have to reflect on the following points when you're planning, reviewing, and creating content. So this would include clear objectives, your target audience, channel strategy, content themes, your NOC point of view, and your tone of voice. So this then pulls us into our strategy framework. When creating your social media strategy, you should outline the key content themes that you want to hero for your specific NOC. So these may be the content themes that you post about on a regular basis, or a campaign or a live event that you've got coming up, specifically Tokyo. These themes will always support your goals of your NOC, and they'll be relevant and interesting to your audience. So a good way to check that your content themes connect with your audience is to always ask, what is the purpose of this piece of content? So different content themes will serve a different purpose, such as informative or educational or inspirational, as we've listed here as some examples. And essentially what you want to do is that make sure that you've got an overall understanding of the purpose of each piece of content that you create. And then it means that you should stay focused with your goals strategically and everything is aligned. Your strategy should also explain how you'll position your NOC on social media, which includes your point of view. So this is how you will show your content to the world. Are you looking to be the trusted authority, or maybe a sports enthusiast? However that you decide on this is specific to your NOC, and this will tailor your approach in how you deliver your content. This then obviously moves directly onto the tone of voice. So how you shape your tone of voice is dependent on who you are as an NOC and the messages you're trying to tell. By having basically this clear tone of voice, this will reflect your social media strategy, and it makes sure that you can communicate effectively with your audience, your athletes, and any potential stakeholders.
And just on this one, I should have said at the start, a lot of these frameworks are within the social media handbook, this being one of them. So we will be sharing this presentation after, but this is within the handbook for you to dive back into.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Chris, I should have said that. Cool. Oh, so leading on from tone of voice and content themes and your point of view, the most important thing when creating your social media strategy is communication. So communication is key when you're creating a successful social media strategy. And I personally like to use a checklist from the following table. So what this does is it aligns everyone that works in your NOC and your content strategy in one place. And it focuses your content and your messaging across all of the themes. So to start with is information. So what's the message that you're saying? What is the contents of your message? Are you factual, informative? There's a different range that you can take, and this will change depending on your content theme as well. Then the context, oh, sorry, Chris. Then the context, why are you publishing this content? Who is this content for? And what do you want to achieve with this piece of content? Then the medium, so this is where is the content going? What platform is it for? Are you creating different versions of this piece of content that will go across a range of platforms? And if so, does this change your message or which audience will see this content? And then lastly, we have type, which is the actual type of content. And this is important as different types of content will serve a different purpose and achieve different results depending on the platform. So these are 4 points that are really fundamental when you're creating your social media strategy. Thanks. So by doing all of these following points, essentially what you've done is create an effective guide for planning, creating, and communicating your social media strategy. And therefore this is your complete base of how you're going to create and share your content. This in turn will attract new fans, athletes, sponsors, generate overall satisfaction with your content, and therefore achieve your NOC goals. So my top takeaways for when planning your social media strategy are: create a checklist that's personalized to your NOC. Only create, plan, and publish content if you can answer why. And this falls back to the communication slide. And review, learn, and update. So you'll always be constantly updating your social media strategy, depending on the time of day and what your content is and events. And it's always a learning curve. So that's basically the 3 main points. And always remember that if your content strategy isn't built from objectives, then it's not a strategy, it's just content. Cool. Thanks, Chris.
Hi everyone, I'm Ollie, and I'm going to talk about how you can develop a content marketing plan using a data-driven approach. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start by asking you all a question, and a poll should be appearing on your screen very shortly. And the question I want to ask is, which of these will be your biggest social media priority during the Olympic Games? So hopefully this will appear shortly for you, and there'll be a couple of multiple choice options. And what we'll do at the end of the next slide is I can have a look at the results and share those with you. Chris, if we go to the next slide, thank you. So before you build a strategy or create content, the first thing you've got to do is define your objectives and the goals, which is crucial. They have to relate to the NOC's organisational goals. I've listed here some examples that you could start thinking about in terms of what goals you want to set for the Olympic Games. For example, if your NOC wants to grow audiences, your goal would be to increase the number of fans on each social media channel. Your NOC may want to increase the awareness of all athletes that are competing at the Olympic Games. So one way you can achieve this is by trying to generate more impressions and engagements on all social media posts that relate to these athletes. Another goal you could potentially look at, and a question to ask, is does your NOC have commercial partnerships? If so, one of your goals could be to maximize the brand exposure on your social media channels of these brands. And finally, if your NOC wants to increase website page views, one of the goals you should focus on is trying to generate more traffic to the website. Smart goals, oh sorry, we've now got the results have just popped up on my screen. So interesting, 38% of respondents said awareness was their biggest goal during the Olympic Games. So really it's around trying to drive as many people to your pages as possible. So it's, and we'll come on to this shortly, but looking at what drives impressions and video views and getting more people to see your content. And in theory, the more people that see your content will mean more people will start following your pages, and then they'll start to engage with you. So we've seen the number one answer here was awareness, followed by both engagement and growth. And there's both tactics throughout this presentation and in the handbook that can help you achieve all 3 of these goals, plus some of the others that we've listed. So when you set goals, they've got to be smart. These are a set of criteria that improves the chances of succeeding in accomplishing your goals within a certain time frame. So working through each of these components will help you understand what needs to be accomplished and when, and how you'll know when you're successful. First, the goal has to be specific. You need to try and answer questions such as, why is this goal important? Or who is working on this goal with me? An example of this goal could be something like, our social media team will work together to grow our Facebook page by 5,000 fans during the Olympic Games by creating engaging content that in turn generates greater awareness of our NOC. Secondly, the goal has to be measurable. By this, I mean you need to have numbers that quantify what success looks like and to be able to track performance. if your goal is to increase Facebook fans, turn this into a measurable goal, such as generate 5,000 new fans on Facebook. Next. Is the goal achievable?
I think the sound is
here.
Yes, if everyone can mute your mics, and thank you.
Next, is the goal achievable? It has to be realistic and something you can actually accomplish. Set targets based on your previous performance, historical data that you might have, the resources you've got available to you, and you can always benchmark against similar sized organizations. If you're averaging 1,000 new Facebook fans a month, would a target of 100,000 new fans next month be achievable? Probably not. Is your goal relevant to what your overall goals are for your NOC? How will these goals help your NOC? If the short-term goal is for your NOC to increase awareness, then your goals have got to be focused about generating a number of social media impressions, video views, or reaching more fans. And finally, what is your goal time frame? If there is no time frame or timings are not realistic, the chances are you'll struggle to hit them. You need to make sure you have a start date and an end date to help create urgency and therefore greater motivation in achieving the goal. For example, a time-related goal would be to generate 5,000 new fans on Facebook between the opening and closing ceremonies in Tokyo. Once goals are set, you can start to think about developing your content marketing plan. To begin, you've got to better understand your audience and the current breakdown by channel. Section 12 of the handbook provides you with a table that illustrates what audience data is available on each social media channel. And when you conduct your audience research, there's a number of questions for you to start thinking about, such as, where is your audience located? What other countries are your audiences from? And are there any cities in your own country that have a significantly high percentage of fans? Next, think about some of the age and gender questions. So how old is your audience? And what is the gender split? And have a look to see if this differs across channels. Then you need to have a look at how channels perform. And when we're answering this, we're saying what channels generate the most engagement? And when are your audiences most likely to be online? And finally, when we look at the content, we want to know if the audience prefer videos, photos, or any other type of content on each platform. All of the answers to these questions will help better understand the type of content you need to produce. You might discover your Facebook audience is older, more likely to be male, and interested in archive video content. On the other hand, your Instagram audience might be younger, more likely to be female, and engage with content that is focused around current Olympians. If they are typically online in the morning, then this is when you should start thinking about posting. Once you know more about your audiences, you then need to analyze the channels in greater detail. If Instagram represents just 5% of your total social media size, is it wise to spend 90% of your time trying to create content just to meet the needs of that audience? Equally, if your resources and skill sets suggest producing more photos and videos, then maybe you should focus on Instagram and Twitter versus YouTube and Facebook. Section 3 of the handbook covers the key features of each platform, including how often to post, top tips, and their limitations. For example, did you know that Twitter has the largest percentage of male users of all the platforms that we refer to? And the largest age group on Twitter is 30 to 49 years old. It is recommended to post a minimum of once a day on Twitter, and it's best used for generating conversations, building brand awareness, and providing real-time updates. Next, you want to analyze your previous content and how it has performed through conducting your very own content audit. There are many ways to do this, and I'm going to talk through a couple of steps so you can start creating your own audit straight away. Firstly, what you'll need to do is create a spreadsheet that contains a list of all your social media posts, the format of the content, so whether it is a photo, a video, a link, for example, the date or month it was posted, and what channel it was posted on. You may decide to do all the posts over the last 6 months, over the last 12 months, or just have a look at posts that are related to competitions. The point of this exercise, though, is to really understand what works best for your own channels. The next step is where your content audit is personalized to you and is tailored for your own needs. Add as many columns as you wish to your spreadsheet. That will help you decide what makes certain content perform better than others. On the right-hand side, you can see some examples that I have added to my own audit. For example, you might want to add a column called Purpose, which Emma mentioned earlier, where each post is tagged based on whether it is to educate people, inspire them, or to entertain. Similarly, you might want to tag posts by sport or by gender of each athlete mentioned in the content to see if one performs better than other. You might actually learn that content focusing on female athletes performs best on Instagram, whereas content focusing on athletics performs best than any other sport on Facebook. The next slide has an example of some dummy data that I've just put together, and really it just shows you what this content audit will look like. At this stage, you'll then start to add the performance metrics of each post, including impressions, video views, and engagements. There are details in section 12 of the handbook that provides more information on the analytics of each social media channel. But as you can see here, this is simply a line-by-line guide to adding all the posts, making sure you add as many columns as you wish. And we'll come on to the next slide, which gives you a couple of examples of what we can do with this type of data. So once all your posts have been tagged and the data has been added, you can start to analyze what performs best on each channel and what content underperforms. It would be recommended to produce more of the content that overperforms and decide if there is anything you can do to improve the performance of content which generated less impressions or engagements. These bar charts are just a couple of examples of what you can do with the data, and you can either compare each chart against one another, or you can look at all the data combined to come up with a new piece of content. For example, if I take the best performing content in each graph, I would then suggest posting a piece of content that is an educational video, educational photo that features both male and female hockey players as an example. But really, this is ultimately depending, however much data you put in, is dependent on how much data you can get out. So I'd encourage you definitely to build a spreadsheet of all your posts and add as many tags as you can think of that can help differentiate different pieces of content. Finally, you'll want to ensure each new piece of content sits under one of several themes. The themes are entirely up to you, but they'll need to support your NOC goals and connect with what your audience wants to consume. I've listed some example themes here that include athletes, which during Tokyo 2020 would focus on Olympians, either through behind the scenes content, interviews, fact files, or photo galleries of athletes. Next, another theme could be events, which would provide your audiences with live updates, recaps, and content of all the sports featuring your athletes throughout the Olympic Games. Archive content could include reliving previous tournaments, whether it be Olympic or non-Olympic, through using images and any videos that you've got at your disposal in the run-up to Tokyo. And finally, you could create a development content theme that showcases the sport development initiatives from your NOC. To recap on the next slide, to successfully develop your content marketing plan, I've got 3 key takeaways. Firstly, to set SMART goals. Number 2, to understand your audience, and thirdly, to analyse your current content. I'll hand you back over to Emma.
Thank you, Ollie. Yeah, over to you, Emma.
Thanks, all. So next step, now that you've got your social media strategy and your content marketing plan, it's time to actually plan your content. So this is how we create a content plan. So the first step in creating a content plan is deciding on a process. So the process is how you want to plan your content, what tools you will use, and who will be planning your content within your NOC. So there are multiple systems that you can use to plan your content, and these will allow several members to collaborate when planning. If you're unable to invest or require multiple content plans, then we recommend using Excel to create a content calendar to track and manage your content. So these are some examples of content plan templates, and these again will be found within the handbook. So this is an empty one. This is one with some practice content for you to see. And this is how you would record and plan your content. So some other examples of key content management tools include Monday.com, Trello, Asana, and WorkZone. So having a shared content schedule is a really useful document which enables everyone in your NOC to understand what's going on. This helps to ensure that you have the right people in place to deliver your strategy, generate ideas, and create your content.
And Emma, I'm just going to jump in here. There are quite a few questions coming in. I didn't want to, we were waiting at the end, but one was relating to Hootsuite, which again would fit into this area here, wouldn't it? Which is, a very good way to plan as well. And then there are numerous on the market, aren't there, Emma?
Yeah, there's lots of different management tools, and it's basically working out which one works best for you, the people in your team, the type of content that you've got, and your own event calendar. Because a lot of people don't need Hootsuite. It's really helpful to have or another management tool, to have all of your content and your calendar in one place and being able to schedule that content in one place. But in terms of just planning and tracking your content, it's what works best for you as individual NOCs and teams. So when you're planning your content, it's important to select the right type of content for the message that you want to deliver. So this is where you ask yourself, what types of content do you need to produce that will complement your current content whilst supporting your social media strategy? Your content should always reflect your NOC's message and resonate closely with your audiences. And if possible, your content should always align to the corresponding channel. So content types will differ across channels, and what might work well for Instagram may not work on Twitter. And so you may need to vary the type of content, even if you are saying the same message and sharing the same message. How you plan to deliver that content will have to vary. So this brings us back to our content communication. And these are the questions that we would always ask ourselves within our social media strategy. This is where we would go through our checklists and answer the information, context, medium, and type questions that we know to ask ourselves. And by doing this, we just back up our strategy and make sure that we're always making an informed decision towards an NOC objective when we're planning our content. So once you've selected your processes and your content types, you can move on to actually planning your content. And these can be based around a number of things. These again will be specific to your NOC, your events, your goals, and what messages you're trying to send, share, and achieve. So these can be based around live events, moments in the sporting calendar, breaking news, athlete lifestyle, campaigns, education, user-generated content, or really anything that is relevant to your NOC. All of these content pieces will serve an overall purpose as well, such as to entertain, inspire, inform, or connect, and they will all funnel in to your overall social media strategy. So whatever you plan, your content plan should always include the following. So when you're looking at your content plan and you've got all of your content inside and planned and ready to go, your overall view should be that you've got lots of varied types of content. So it's packed with video and images, graphics, interviews, editorial, whatever is relevant to you. A mix of people. So something that everyone should always do when planning their content is make sure you've got accurate and equal representation, you're inclusive, and everyone who would be engaging with your content can see themselves represented. And then a clear message is key. So obviously your content should be planned around, only plan content if you can consider why you need this content, what is its purpose, and how do you measure the success. So again, this falls back to our communication table where we can ask ourselves these questions and go through our checklist. And then we have focused timings. So your content should always be planned around, as Ollie said, the specific best practices to your NOC. So these will be different times, days, and dates, and they will change dependent on the platform that you're using. So one piece of content that you have created for YouTube, or a video piece of content, for example, that you're posting on YouTube, that will need to be posted potentially at a different time to when you would post that on Facebook. So this will be covered in more detail as well with Matt later on. So my final takeaways for when you're creating your content plan are: select and stick to a clearly defined planning process. Plan your content that is realistic to your goals, the resources that you have available, and messages that you want to share. And create your specific checklist. So again, this will be down to your teams and your NOCs. So why, what, how, and especially if you can answer all of these, then you're pretty much good to go.
Thanks for that, Emma. I think now we're on to Ollie to take on this last little session of the first one. So Ollie, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So yeah, I've just got a couple of slides here to talk about how to track and measure your social media progress. First, it's about knowing the difference between the objectives and your metrics. So the objectives are the desired outcomes, and this is stuff that you'll discuss internally and work out as an organisation. What do you want to achieve by producing social media content? For example, you might want to increase awareness of your athletes, or you might want to grow the social media audience size. Then the metrics are the actual measurements of success. And this can come in the form of the number of impressions, engagements, or new fans. One of the questions that is often asked is, how often should you report on these metrics? And the answer to that is it's really up to you and what resources you've got available. We know some NOCs use tools such as Hootsuite, which Saul mentioned earlier, and it can pull data for you automatically. However, we know some NOCs don't conduct any reporting at all. So what we've also found out is some NOCs report weekly data and present these top line numbers to wider teams, and others produce monthly reports that are distributed to other people. However, for those who currently don't do any reporting, what I would encourage you to do is to become familiar with the analytics of each social media channel in preparation for the Olympic Games. And again, we've referred to this in the handbook. Then throughout the games, you can monitor daily the content that you are producing in terms of what is driving engagement and where new followers are coming from. And then you can make tweaks to your content throughout the game time. A report should then be produced after the Olympic Games to showcase all the content that you've created and relate it back to your SMART goals. I would suggest trying to answer as many questions as possible, such as, did you hit your follower targets? Or how many engagements did you generate? What type of content performs best? Were the number of engagements higher or lower than you expected? And how did it compare to previous years and events? As mentioned earlier, you can use the handbook to identify the metrics that match objectives and on which social media channels you can find them. Each channel has its own analytics platform to learn more about your audience and the content. For example, you can use Facebook Insights to understand how people are engaging with your page, view metrics about your page's performance, learn which posts have the most engagement, and see when your audience is online. Like I said, each platform has its own analytics tool. They're all free to use, and there are guides on each platform on how you can use them to your best ability. And finally, from me, I just want to refer you back to the ANOC social media dashboard that Gustavo mentioned at the beginning, which both sits on the ANOC website, and I believe the link was shared in this chat earlier on. At Redtorch, we update this every month using publicly available data to provide NOCs with a dashboard that you can interact with, and it can be used in a number of ways, including to provide an overview of all NOCs across all platforms, to compare the performance of NOCs by continental association, to benchmark your performance against other NOCs, and then to review monthly trends by social media platforms. And we've seen examples where you might have seen a decrease in your Twitter followers month on month, or there may be a case where the number of engagements has fallen on Instagram from this month compared to last month. And what you can do is look at the dashboard to see, is this actually a trend worldwide across all the other NOCs? Is this something that NOCs from my continent are also experiencing? Or is it something that NOCs that have a similar fan base are also experiencing? So you can see how your performance is also impacted by the wider environment. So that's it from me and Emma, and I guess now let's open up the floor to any questions that you have.
And yeah, thank you, Ollie and Emma. We have a number
Yes.
of questions.
We do have a few questions, but I'll put them together since a lot of them are about the same topic. So I think the first one, Chris, there's a lot of people like Kosovo, Belgium, Sri Lanka, and the question is basically how they are having challenge on getting their accounts verified. So can you give them a tip on this? We have talked before about some initiatives that the IOC maybe was taking, but I'll let you guys answer it.
Okay, well, what I'll do is I'll field the questions, but on this one, I'm probably best placed to answer it. And as an agency, we get it asked, numerous times from all sorts of organisations. But when it comes to this, and I think I'll refer to the IOC initiative. Just some background to this. The IOC have and are in the process of verifying Olympians via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram with their relationship with the social media platforms. That's sort of an ongoing process. We have discussed with ANOC, with Gustavo and the team, working with the IOC on verifying NOC social media handles. This is work in progress. I know we're recording this, so I don't want to say something out of turn, but I think leading up to the games, I think that there'll be a push to get NOCs where possible verified. I can't say anything more than that. And I think that's the best route, if I'm honest, to do that. I think you can go via the platforms directly, but the process will take longer.
Yeah, that's something that I think us from ANOC as well, we can try to understand how we can support this, maybe contact the different platforms and act as a facilitator for this verification process. If we can jump then for another questions, we have one from the Uganda NOC. How can we measure a successful social media plan? And yeah, that's it. That's the question. How can you measure a successful social media plan?
Okay, well, I'll pass this over probably to Ollie, who looks after research. Emma, I'm sure could answer this, but maybe Ollie, do you want to answer this question?
Yeah, so Gustavo, say it again. It was how to measure
A successful social media plan.
I think really to measure it comes back to these SMART goals, and really what do you define as success? If success is really to generate more video views, then you need to set a number or a target that you want to try and achieve, and then measure this throughout, whether it's the Olympic Games, measure it every day, every week, or at the end at the games time. But really success does depend on what your objectives are, and there should always be a purpose to creating social media content. I think it's incredibly important to have social media as part of your strategic goals. But ultimately, there's got to be a reason why you're employing people to produce content. So know why you're doing it, try and work out what you are trying to achieve from this, and then take it from there. But I think setting actual measurable numbers is the best way to measure success.
Good, thank you. So, we have 2 more questions that just came in. One is from ANOC Trinidad and Tobago President, Mr. Brian Lewis. Please address the challenge of monetizing social media elements, the challenges and obstacles and critical success factors, threats and weaknesses.
It's a very good question, a very large question to try and answer in a short period of time. I can probably give my top line thought on this particular question in terms of monetization. Again, it's a question that gets answered a lot. It depending on how you are looking to monetize. I think these are questions you need to consider, whether via the platform itself or driving people to something, to buy something, for example. But ultimately, it comes down to your audience, the size of your audience, how engaged that audience is, and how easy they will be persuaded in quite straight terms to either to do something or what they represent in terms of value to someone. I'm not answering this question specifically, but I think if you get audience growth and engagement, monetization becomes a lot easier. I think that's the starting point from where we start from for anything.
Okay. And we'll take 2 more questions, and then all additional questions we can try to get at the end.
Yeah.
The next one is from our colleagues from the ANOC of Brazil. Any tips or case studies on how to retain the growth and engagement after the Olympic Games?
Very good question. I'll probably throw this to maybe Matt or Emma, actually, in terms of this question, in terms of post-event, how do you maintain engagement with an audience?
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah, Emma, do you want to?
Yeah, more than happy. So again, this will fall back to your content planning and your resources and the types of content that you have available. So there's lots of different ways that you maintain the buzz around an event, such as wrap-up content, fan favorite moments, untold stories, small highlights, edit videos. There's lots of different ways, and you can be really creative as you like with post-event content. I think something that's always important is to not just let the event end once the event ends, and remember that your audience is interested in that content and it's making it as excitable and passionate for them as possible. So yeah, it's being really creative, making the most out of your resources, repurposing other pieces of content that you've used, and going from there, really.
Perfect. And we'll take just one last question. Is from ANOC of Japan, but this one I think we can answer. Will TikTok be included in the social media dashboard in the near future? And the plan is that we have an eye on the development of TikTok, and We will discuss further with Redtorch to see what's possible, but we think that's very likely to happen. We'll see if we can do that technically, and if so, it might come in the future. There are more questions coming in, but now we stop and we continue the presentations and we take the remaining questions at the end, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Gustavo, and thank you everyone for all the questions. Yeah, as I said, we'll endeavour to answer them all, so keep them coming. What I'm going to do now, is hand over to Matt now to take this session.
Hello everyone, my name's Matt. I'm the Creative Director at Redtorch, and good afternoon from a very sunny London. And I hope the weather all around where you are right now is as nice as ours. It's not very often that I can say that about London, so I'm taking the opportunity. I'm going to talk to you about content creation today. And I'm going to start with a quote from an interview that we did with ANOC from Jordan. And the reason I've selected this quote, it's because it hits a number of the beats that is really crucial to content creation. I won't read it out in detail, but essentially the things that the ANOC mentions in his interview is starting with a social media strategy, then having regular brainstorming sessions to inspire ideas, setting clear set goals before launching any project or creating any content, always considering the audience first, and what their needs are and what their interests are, the platforms that you will be creating your content for, and understanding what works best on those platforms. And then finally, what you're hoping to achieve. And this might be the emotion that you're hoping to inspire with each piece of content. So I'm going to be talking to you today about those things: social media strategy, brainstorming, audiences, platforms, and emotions, among other things. Okay, so if we can move on, please. So first of all, this is a quote from our Jordan ANOC. Alongside our written social media strategy, our primary source of creativity is the National Strategy for Sport. So we're going to have a look at social media strategy. Now, this is just a refresher because, of course, Emma was kind enough to talk us through this just a few minutes ago. But just to recap, these are the 6 stages that we need to look at, the 6 things to always bear in mind for content strategy. And they are: set clear objectives, identify who your target audience is and understand what they're looking for, understand your channels and build a strategy based on what works best for those, develop some content themes, and these should always ladder up to your objectives, identify what your point of view is and what your tone of voice is going to be. So once all of those have been set out in your content strategy, we'll be looking at platforms. So our ANOC from Jordan told us content is also tailored to different platforms depending on content type, presentation, and target audiences. So let's have a look at those platforms on the next slide. Now, these first 4 on the left are our mainstay. And of course, TikTok is growing at a huge rate. And as Japan ANOC mentioned earlier, increasingly, it needs to be considered in content strategy if you have the resource. But what do all these platforms do? Well, if you were to break them down, obviously there's plenty of overlap, but Facebook is about delivering reach. It's about getting the most amount of people. Obviously it's pay to play. And what we mean by that is you can't reach many people organically without paying, using media budget to target audiences. But if you have media budget available to you, then you can reach exactly, you can be really precise on who you want to reach, whether it be an audience, female audience under 24, or a male audience over 30. You can be super precise where they are in your country. Lots of different ways that you can target people with your content. Instagram, this is about shorter form visual storytelling. You can tell stories from behind the scenes of sporting events, or you can give your athletes the opportunity to take over your channel and tell their story direct to your audience. Next, we've got Twitter, and that is all about delivering new news. It's also very effective at supplying links to websites to drive traffic. Then we have YouTube, and this is video content that is rich and deep. So this could be live video, it could be how-to video content, or it could be long form storytelling. And then finally, TikTok. These can be athlete challenges, fan challenges, they can be how-tos or behind the scenes content. So those are our 5 main channels. So if we could move on. Next, we're going to look at audience. The different preferences of audiences across multiple platforms need to be considered to ensure we're comprehensive and we deliver a variety of content. So if we move on one slide. Now, who are our audiences and what are they already looking at? Well, the reason for this rather bizarre picture is the statement that we are competing against the whole internet for audience attention. And the internet, as we all know, can be very distracting. So we need to create very engaging content that delivers on what our audience is looking for. And we can, once we understand who our audience is, we can also look at what the types of content that they are looking at, whether they be other websites, other video sources, other channels, and you can have a look at your competitors, whether they be other ANOCs or whether they be sports websites or sports channels, and you can look to cherry pick the best of that content that suits your purposes, that you think might work for your audience. Okay, so next slide, please. Of course, the other questions to ask ourselves when we're thinking about our audience are, when are they looking for content? And of course, that's going to affect when we publish ours. If our audience is always looking for content during their lunch times, then let's publish our content that's fresh just as lunchtime starts. Or what emotions and responses are we looking to provoke? We'll get on to emotion on the next slide. And as I mentioned earlier, where are our audiences online? Are they already in particular platforms like YouTube or Instagram or Facebook? Are they already going to other big sports websites or news websites that you can partner with potentially? Are there ways that you can supply your content to third parties, such as magazines or influencers? Are there ways that you can do partnerships that can benefit both of you? For example, you could provide them with exclusive content, they could provide you with their audiences. Okay, next slide, please. So we've got a bit of a poll here, and I wanted to ask you, which of these formats would you be most likely to use during the Olympics? We've got throwbacks, so that's using your archive content to remember great moments from tournaments past, perhaps a podcast, an Instagram takeover, perhaps by one of your athletes, or user-generated content. and we'll talk about that in more detail later on. Right, so if you want to find out more about the formats that are available to you, please check out the handbook, which has so much of this information you'll find in there. And this particular slide about formats and the options available to you, you'll find on page 14. Next slide, please. Just realized I need to complete the poll to see the next slide. Okay, so emotion. We said we were going to talk about that. Enhancing national pride through sporting achievements is the main emotion we want to achieve through our social media content. So let's have a look at our next slide. How do we generate emotion? And why should we generate emotion? Well, I think what's really exciting about content that that generates emotion is it helps us to solve a challenge. Many fans at the Olympics might have trouble understanding sports that they don't watch all year round. But the one thing that we understand, all of us, whoever we are, is emotion. Tell us a story about emotions and we'll get it. We'll get it in here and we'll get it instantly. One great way to inspire emotional stories is to ask athletes to talk about their experience. And when we do that, we help people to get to know athletes as people. And that makes it much easier for fans to support an athlete when they know them better as human beings. This isn't just my theory. This is proven scientific fact that the more emotional content is, the more shareable it becomes. And I love this chart here, which gives you an idea of some of the emotions that you can tap into through content when you're planning. What emotions do you want to target? Love, optimism, trust, joy. These are all fantastic emotions that will inspire people to engage and share your content. Next slide, please.
And Matt, yeah, I don't know if everyone saw the poll results, Matt, but
oh yes, I was going to get to those. I'm delighted with the results here because 33% of you said that user-generated content is your priority for the Olympics of these formats. So we have a section of this presentation dedicated to UGC. So you've played into our hands. Thank you very much. Hopefully this will be very useful coming up in just a couple of slides. Emotion. So we were talking about emotion and how people respond to people. If you want to inspire national support, it's much easier to get fans to support athletes as people than it is for them to support a ANOC, for example. And this is a great example from Team USA, who are introducing before the Olympics their athletes, and they're explaining what makes each of these athletes so unique, and they're telling stories about what makes them great in the field of their performance in their sport, but also what makes them special as human beings. What challenges have they overcome to get there? We know that data shows that if athletes talk about the challenges they've faced, they've overcome, that makes their stories so much more attractive to young people in particular. So we want to know what these athletes are like. We want to know what they're like even when they're not performing, and how are not just what makes them different, but also what makes them the same as us. What are their families like when they're not performing? How, are they a parent, or are they, what is their role in their families and their friends? What do they do to relax? This is all helps us build a 360-degree picture. Right, next slide, please. So athletes are your influencers. If you can create a campaign or content that uses them, that includes them, then you can power your content with their followers as well as yours. They can share your content, you can share theirs. You could do this under a shared hashtag, just as Team USA have done with We Are Team USA. Next slide, please. Brainstorming. So ideas and discussed and generated through regular brainstorming sessions, insight reports, sports events, and trends. So how do we brainstorm? That's a great question. So we've provided in the next slide an example of how to brainstorm. And that is using the thinking hats strategy. Now you'll see there's a series of hats. Now don't worry, you don't need hats to do this strategy. You can use post-it notes or stickers or badges, but essentially what it is using your team to maximize its creativity. Now you can do it where each one of you takes a role. One of you can be factual, one is emotional, one is logical, and so on. And you take that line of thinking and start to generate ideas and challenge ideas based on that line of thinking. Another approach might be for you all to wear the factual hat at one time and to challenge yourself to generate ideas based on the facts or based on emotions, or you can challenge the ideas. Once you've got an idea, you can challenge it by being cautious. Let's everyone be cautious and think, what could go wrong with this idea? Or alternatively, let's everyone not worry about what the problems could be, and let's think outside the box. So that is a lovely way to brainstorm. There is a video next, but I'm going to move on because I'm keeping track of time and I think we won't have time to play that. And I want to move on to UGC. So if we move forward one slide. Once you have a number of ideas, a great thing to do is to start plotting them on this matrix, which on one axis you've got impact and on another is effort. So your aim is to work out each idea, how does it rate in terms of how much effort will it take to produce, and how much impact will it make. And your ideal is to have all your ideas, or to only do the ideas that are going to be in the top left-hand corner, high impact and low effort. Obviously, those with low impact and high effort, you want to put in the dustbin, I'm afraid. Right. Next, we're going to talk about curating versus creation. Now, there's two ways to generate content: curating and creating. Curating is about gathering content from trusted sources relevant to your NOC. Creating is content produced by you. Curation, which is this gathering content, is a low effort method, and it provides your audience with a diversity of content and helps you balance out the content you're sharing. So a recommended output is 40% of the content you share should be created and 60% curated. Next slide, please. How to curate? Well, if you want to curate, you might look at the social feeds of trusted sources such as athletes, IFs, the IOC, and any other trusted organizations, and cherry pick the best of their content for your channels. Obviously, you want to ensure that it aligns with your content strategy and point of view. And one way to source these great bits of content is to use a shared hashtag to find and source these relevant content on social. Next slide, please. User-generated content. Well, you said you wanted to use user-generated content during the Olympics. So here's some, what I hope for, useful advice and hacks. User-generated content is invaluable because it turns your fans into your influencers. It can be low effort, it can have a high impact, and it connects you with your fans, boosting your channels, whether they be social or digital, and they can also help you gather valuable fan data. How do you use UGC? Well, first of all, you want to create a unique hashtag that you distribute across your social channels with content. You might want to invite athletes to participate in this UGC, which will drive engagement. And you definitely need to tell your fans what types of content you're wishing to gather. And you might want to motivate them with prizes to inspire them to participate. Next slide. What things can you invite fans to do? Well, you can ask them to show their support for the national team at the Olympics. You can ask them to demonstrate their sporting talents. You can ask them to take part in a challenge, or you can ask them to share their experiences, perhaps of the Olympics. What to avoid with UGC? Well, one of the things that's really important is keep that barrier to entry as low as possible. If you want as many people to participate, don't ask them to do things that they wouldn't usually share on social. Ensure that you thank and congratulate them to keep that the constant flow coming in. And if you are going to curate their content onto a microsite, you might want to look into building in an element of censorship to avoid any trolling. And you will also want to publish your terms and conditions to protect you from privacy and copyright infringement. Here's an example in this picture of how Coca-Cola asked people to provide their taglines for Coca-Cola, and some bright spark decided to have a joke about how much sugar was in Coca-Cola, and that went straight out onto social. And so if you can install some form of censorship, you have someone checking what people are submitting before you put it on your website. That's best advised. So finally, just some key takeaways to wrap up. Always start with your content strategy. It's key to understand your audience. Make sure you tailor your content for your platforms. Brainstorm those content ideas, then create and curate content. And before you decide to go live with your ideas, evaluate them based on what will have the most impact for the least amount of effort. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Matt. That was very good timing with user-generated content from that poll. Now we're going to move back to Emma.
Hi again, everyone. Matt had the fun part of content creation and I have the serious rule side. So we're going to jump into the best practice around content creation. So branding, it's something that every company, brand, NOC, IF has. And branding is so important because it distinguishes your NOC. And therefore, that means that you need a strict best practice rule that is specific on how your branding can be used. So you should always stick to your NOC's specific brand guidelines, and this will keep your content easily recognizable, on brand, and true to the messaging that you're trying to share. So always include the following in any NOC branding: your logo, your chosen colors, your chosen fonts, and your tone of voice, or the language or the type of messaging that you always include. So make sure that your platform page always includes a profile picture, a header, and a biography. So these are the first things that people see when they come to your platform pages, and they need to be true to your NOC, reflecting all of your, obviously your branding, but in terms of your biography, the language, your point of view, and your tone of voice that you would use. And we would always recommend as well that you use NOC branded thumbnails or cover images. So for example, when you're uploading a video, you would have a specifically designed thumbnail on that photo that has your branding on, and it provides a really clean and cohesive look across all of your pages. So these are just some strong branding examples from Twitter. So as you can see, obviously the header and the profile picture, including the same colors, logo, font, and they've got a very clear biography and a link to their website. So onto logos and watermarks. The logo of your NOC is something that should always remain consistent, however it is used across your content. So your NOC brand logo or watermark is a must-have, so your audience can easily recognize your content and your NOC. So your logo should be subtle, but obviously obvious when used in being creative and applying it to content such as video, images, or graphics. So call to actions. A call to action is a prompt that encourages a specific response from your audience, and it asks them to complete a specific action. So a call to action, or CTA, would go at the end of your post copy, at the end of a video, the bottom of a graphic, or post creative. They should always be clear to understand, short to read, and easy for your audience to achieve. There's lots of different ways that you can be creative with call to actions. And again, there's something that you can put a real spin on and make specific to your NOC. So here's an example that you can see from the Australian Olympic team. And they've asked their audience, what do you think of the new uniforms? So this is a really strong example of a subtle call to action, but it very clearly asks the audience their opinion, and it's engaging them in a conversation and asking them to comment. So by asking a direct question, it's clear that you value your audience, you want their interaction, and you're asking them just to very simply comment on your post. So moving on to images, these should always be of high quality, the correct dimensions for individual platforms, and that's something that you can find in a table within the handbook. So that's something that you can keep on you for easy use, or eventually obviously you'll pick up. They'll be true to your NOC brand guidelines, such as you only use athletes in certain poses, or only within field of play, no behind the scenes, and they'll be relatable to your audiences. So images are one of the most important types of content that you can use, and you always want these to be really bold and eye-catching and positive. So some ways that you can improve how your images perform on social is by making sure that they're really bright. Color always performs best across all platforms rather than black and white images. Make sure that they're simple and easy to understand so that your audience can directly see what's happening when they first look at the image. Ensure that they're of the highest possible definition. So something really important to remember is that whatever you upload to the platform, the quality will automatically be slightly reduced just from the publishing process. And so you need to start with the highest quality image that you can, just to keep that high definition actually online for your audience. So using a wide range of audiences of images is super important to keep your audience excited and feel like they're part of the action, and portraying the whole kind of event or storyline or elements of your sport. And as well, it's important to use a call to action if the graphic or the image is suitable, and these can be applied directly to the image or the graphic, or again within post copy. So moving on to graphics, graphics tend to be used for providing information to your audience. So here's a nice example, and obviously they're commonly used for ticket sales or competitions, how-to guides, advertising a takeover from an athlete on your channel, and the time of events and how to watch events. So again, these are something that they have a very clear purpose. So yes, moving on to this page, we have basically a breakdown of what you should always do when using graphics. So super easy to understand, very clear message as soon as you look at the graphic. They're always in your ANOC brand colors and fonts. They include a logo. They've got an image or some form of illustration. They've got a clear call to action. And the main thing is they have a clear purpose. So when you're deciding to use a graphic, you're creating a graphic that will be best suited to the page and the message that you're trying to share with your audience. So video content is generally the best performing type of content across all platforms, even some Instagram pages and some Instagram NOCs or IS. So your video must always be high definition. And again, remembering that this will reduce once uploaded and is on the platform. In the correct dimensions, a clear logo included, the right length for the purpose of the message. The editing is to a high quality, the NOC branding is included, and it tells an engaging story. So going back to what Matt said, is whatever you're creating and you're creating content, it always goes back to that purpose and why an audience wants to see this piece of content. And you want people to be hooked from the very start right to the end.
You just never know what's going to happen, especially in a fighting sport. Like 1 second, it could change the game. One kick, it could change the game. We've seen it so many times. And I think from that, I've learned that all I can do is my absolute best, keep it the best I can, make sure I've prepared the best. And then when I go out there, enjoy the moment and leave it all on the mat, because that's the only thing I can do. And I don't want to regret nothing. So hopefully that is enough to come back with a nice shiny gold medal. But no matter what, I'll go out there and die trying for it. To represent your country on such a massive scale, on a massive stage as the Olympics, and to be part of a journey that is so prestige and so special is a memory I'll never forget, and an opportunity I'll never forget. And I can't wait to go out there, do it again, and just be proud to stand there and be part of Team GB.
So that's a really nice example from Team GB. As you can see, it's 60 seconds in length. This was designed for Instagram. It's in 1:1, which is a square format, and it includes all of their colors, their logo. It's emotional. It includes home shot footage and some action footage, and tells the whole story. So this is a really nice example or format to follow when you're So you can improve the performance of your video content by using the following steps. So grabbing the attention of your audience within the first 7 seconds. So we always recommend that you use like sports action footage or images or something high quality and exciting that will kind of tease your audience and show them the start of your story. Use subtitles for script or a voiceover. Telling a story that your audience can connect with, so it's something relatable that will pull on the heartstrings and engage your audience. Add a CTA to the end of the video, and make sure that your subtitles or your on-screen graphics are easy to read and error-free. And this is really important. It's actually one of the most common reasons why people click off of a video, is that they see a spelling error or the subtitles are in the way of the footage that they're trying to watch. So this is another really nice example.
Obiectivul oricărui sportiv este să ajungă și să cucerească o medalie la Jocurile Olimpice. Acolo ajung doar cei mai buni dintre noi. Sunt Ana Maria Popescu și lupt pentru România la Tokyo. Susține și tu Team România. Avem nevoie de încurajările tale.
Great. So the optimal duration for videos does change. There's changes depending on the platform, but it also does slightly change on the message that you're trying to achieve. So if it's just a general marketing video or a brand video, and this can include for a campaign launch as well, then regardless of the platform, you should always stick to a 2-minute long video. For Facebook, you have some more flexibility. So Facebook always recommends a 3-minute long video, but actually from looking at data and insights, 2 to 5 minutes are best performing when telling an engaging story that's really true to form and authentic to your audience. Instagram, posting on the Instagram grid, so your main page, is 60 seconds or 1-minute video. Obviously there's Instagram TV, which you can upload on in another format, but recommended is primarily using a 60-second video on your main Instagram feed, because this is more likely to be picked up by the algorithm and shown to your fans. YouTube, so they're a lover of long form storytelling, and people tend to, settle in and watch YouTube for an extended period of time. And so the recommended best practice for a YouTube video is 7 to 15 minutes long. And quite often these will be a type of series or within a playlist, so that once people are kind of on your channel and watching your content, they can just keep rolling and going through all of the content that you've got on offer. And then with Twitter, so Twitter, you actually have quite a bit of flexibility. The maximum video you can upload for Twitter is 2 minutes and 20 seconds. However, the best performing video length is always 15 seconds on Twitter. So there are lots of free creative tools that are available online to help you create, resize and edit your content. But a couple of the ones that we regularly recommend are Canva, Trello and Adobe Spark. And they're free to use, they're really simple. They provide you with the dimensions that are needed for the platforms you're editing for, and you can download them straight onto your phone. So some key takeaways for content creation best practice is always stick to the best practice for the platform. And this goes for if you're repurposing different types of content. So you've got one type of content, but it's going across several pages. Make sure that it's in the best practice for each page. Combine this platform best practice with what works best for your NOC. So what works for one NOC might not work best for another. So it is trial and error and working out just what works best for you and your team. And always check that you're creating content in the best format, because you could have an excellent and amazing piece of content, but if you deliver it to your audience in a different format that isn't suitable for the platform, it just won't perform.
No, thank you. Thank you, Emma. Some really useful advice and tips there. So as we move on to the final section of this workshop, and now I'm going to take this, and this is all about resourcing your team. So we know within NOCs, and this is from survey data and also ANOC data, there's a range of people who work on your social media channels. In terms of the size of that team, this can be 1 person, 3 people, 9 or more people in some cases. But you can be successful. So everything we discussed previously, you can be successful with 1 person, but it's really important you're realistic with those capabilities and that resource you have available when you plan your social media strategy. It all goes back to the start. The strategy you create needs to reflect the team and resources you have available. So don't try and spread yourself thinly across lots of channels. If you do, you'll be less effective. And to be honest, it'll be a far more stressful experience if you try and juggle everything. amongst everything. So plan according to the resources and capabilities of your team is our advice. Now, when we talk about who's on your team, I know this will differ in between NOCs, the teams will change, the role titles will change, but really we look at sort of 3 areas within a team. So we have a social media manager, and this person oversees the whole process, sets the social media strategy, and can be responsible for everything. Then we have beside that a content creator, and this is someone we describe as someone who has specific skills such as video editing, writing, graphics, and maybe motion design. And usually as social media teams grow, this is the roles, lots of different roles get created under this overall title. And then lastly, a community manager. This person's in charge of building relationships on social media, engaging directly with your audiences, and that's from your fans, your athletes, you know, chatting to them, building that sense of community, which is critical for growth on social media. Now, I thought this was quite a good example from the Jordan Olympic Committee. They talk about they have 9 resources, including not limited to, and highlighted 3 areas, so content creator, graphic designer, and videographer. So this is this can be an area that's getting built out more over time. But again, you might want to bring these types of people in on a short-term basis to help you at event time or big moments within your calendar. So again, it's how much time do you need for social media? We talked about people, but really we try and break it down. Yes, people are key, but it's really, if we think about the number of social media channels you look to manage, the amount of content you produce is another one, and then the frequency you post and the time you spend in community management can vary vastly. So those things will have a real impact on your time. That combined with these areas, which again, this is all in the handbook, is the 4 areas to consider when you're thinking about this. So finding and creating content. So as Matt talked about curating and curating, as Emma talked about creating original videos, and contacting athletes for content. We then have planning and posting of content. So this is planning your campaigns, filling out some of those spreadsheets Emma talked about previously, writing the copy, scheduling it, and posting it across all your channels. We then have your community management, which is, as I said, answering those questions, asking questions, talking and listening with the audience. And lastly, when Ollie was talking about measuring success, it's analysing what content has or has not been effective, what platforms are being effective in achieving the goals you have set out to do on social media. And when it comes to planning, we've just broken it down very simply. I think this is on page 42 of the handbook, in terms of just planning this internal resource. So by week and by month. And this will go up and down, as I said previously, based upon what your calendar of activity looks like. But I think that a big one for us is that there are lots of different resources to help you manage your social media, from free to paid. And what I'm talking about is different types of people here. So we have got, if we start from free, so this is maybe internal resource. It might not be free to your colleague because it's their time, but you might not be paying them directly for their time to work on social media. So that's internal staff. That is from volunteers you can help, to athletes who want to help create content for you. And we strongly, as Matt said, advise working with these athletes to help them grow, which will help you grow in turn. To students, and this we've seen some success with NOCs with this. Students and interns, in terms of these could be students who do graphic design, who do videography at the local university or anywhere maybe in the country, to journalism students. So they're a rich form of sort of temporary help along those sort of big moments, through to interns, freelancers, and then well, we work for a marketing agency, but you know, there's a whole layer of different people who might help. You know, we'd be thinking some NOCs will be maybe getting a graphic designer in to help make templates for the Olympics, or an intern to help with community management over the Olympics. But the only advice we'll give is really important whenever you think about bringing on new resource, is really what need are they addressing? So, you know, what challenge have you got? And if you can address that, that's great. If not, you're going to bring someone on. It'd be nice to have another body, but they can potentially cause you more work and won't be effective in what you want to achieve. And as I said previously, these can be brought on for short periods of time or longer, on a longer term basis. You can sort of play with that based upon your requirements. So there's a couple of resources, and I want to mention this resource, and this is for a resource for athletes, and you might have heard of it. It's the IC initiative. Where there's some context here is that obviously athletes, as Matt talked about, are great drivers, or your influencers. If your athletes grow, your NOC grows. If you work with your athletes, you know, and they're working on content, it helps. But they are there's a couple of initiatives the IEC do through this program. The athletes can sign up to that can help build their brands. There's brand building activities that will help. You know, the outcome of that is helping you. Over the games is not released yet, and this is sort of you might first time you've heard about this, that there will be some access to technology for athletes to get imagery from Getty Images. So your athletes will be able to get imagery from Getty Images free of charge via this platform to help them promote their own involvement at the Olympic Games. So yeah, I would suggest just to have a look at it, and maybe your athletes as well, suggest them to head to this platform. And then lastly, I think it's just some social media publications. We've talked about giving advice, tips and tricks, but all these platforms, all these social media applications are great for weekly, monthly insights. I know you'll be very busy. These, I believe, are published mainly in English. I'd have to double check that, but if you go onto any of these sites, yeah, and you're looking for ideas or just things to think about, they're great for keeping on top of the latest trends. I just want to put that out there. They also have podcasts, some of them do. So if you like listening to podcasts, I know I do, when you're on the move or you're going to the gym, they're a great thing to listen to. So key takeaways from resourcing your team. Ensure your resourcing capabilities need to reflect your social media strategy. Only recruit people that is there a need to address. And you can remember, you can bring people on a short or long-term basis whenever you look to staff up your activities. And I think, Gustavo, we have got one question. A poll, sorry, I didn't fill it in, so I didn't see it. It'd be interesting to see in terms of the type of resource would help you most at the moment. If you had a wand, which you'd pick out of any of these. I'll just submit that, but yeah, we can refer to that in a minute. But yeah, over to you, Gustavo, for questions. Good.
Thanks a lot, Chris. We do have a few questions that we're going to go through them now. And the first one is from ANOC Andorra, and it's related to your last presentation. What's the most important things to take away for a very small ANOC without too much resources? So how to start?
That's it's again a good question. I think so I don't answer. I'll start answering this, but I'm going to pass it over to someone in a second. I think to me, it just comes back to whenever you think, where do I start? And I'll flip it around and go, what do you want to achieve? And if we start with that question and then and then we essentially take the resource you have available against what you would want to achieve, and then you would focus on the activities that would require. I know that's not a specific answer, Matt, I know you were talking about, looking at low impact activity, low effort, high impact activity. That's probably something else to consider at this stage.
Yeah, I think identifying what your objectives are, then brainstorming some ideas, and then plotting them on that impact versus effort, and seeing which come up in that top left area of that matrix, which is low effort but high impact. Isolating that one idea and focusing on that sounds like a good path to take.
Good. So not trying to embrace the world, but clear objectives and keep it simple within your reach, right?
Yeah.
Very good. We have a question from Sierra Leone, from Ali Koroma. If the biggest media priority during the games is public awareness, as shown in the poll, who creates this awareness?
I'm just going to clarify this question. So, if the biggest media priority during games is public awareness. So is this referring to which stakeholders create awareness, or as an NOC, how to create awareness?
Yes, I think my answer to them would be like to take this opportunity for them to create this awareness, right? So they become this content creator.
Absolutely, and I think on this one, the most important thing and we'll say is athletes, is using your athletes and your current fans within your country, and the more stories around your athletes, the more people are going to be attracted to you, your NOC. I think that's top line how I'd answer that. Emma, have you got any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think essentially the same. I think this is a real chance for you to kind of shout about what you do, who you are, the messages you want to share, what you want to achieve, and the goals that you're trying to bring from your NOC and into the sport as well. I would, post as much as you can, get athletes to share, as Chris mentioned, run a UGC competition, and also contact media outlets and news sources and try and team up and work with other NOCs or IFs with sharing content. So the more people that you can all, share each other's content and use each other to build awareness and build conversation, that's always just going to help the overall awareness for your NOC and the games.
Good. Can we jump for the next one? And then it's from NOC of Micronesia. It's regarding videos. Is it better to post it to the specific channel or to upload the YouTube and then reshare to the different social media platforms?
I'm going to throw this back, to probably a combination of Emma and Ollie, who are probably best placed to answer this question.
Yeah, so for me, I would, unless you're using a third-party scheduling tool such as Hootsuite, it was mentioned earlier, I would always post a specific platform version directly on each platform. And this goes back to tailoring your content for the best practice per each platform. So obviously you would have maybe a longer version of a video on YouTube, then you would have a cut down version for Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, but they would all be organically posted on the native platforms rather than shared via YouTube.
Yep, in addition to that, as Emma said, it's about getting the formatting right and ensuring it's the right length. From a data point of view, you're also going to be able to learn more around performance if the piece of content is published specifically on Facebook, on Twitter and YouTube. The reason being, you can have a look on Facebook and see at what minute or what percentage have people stopped watching the video, or where have those video views come from. Whereas if you just post the YouTube link, you are not going to be able to get that level of detail from your Facebook fans, Instagram or Twitter. So definitely encourage to create the video specifically for each channel.
Acho que o André tem ali uma coisa para mim. Eu vou trazer assim.
Then we have a comment from Trinidad and Tobago. It's about having the possibility to discuss in the future about the mitigation of issues and potential issues related to negative comments on social media platforms, which eventually happens. But I think it's a topic for the handbook, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's a section, and I've just got the handbook up. There's a section on page I believe 51, which talks about reputation management. I think there's quite a bit in there that covers maybe that question.
Yeah, but thank you, Reese, for your comment. Maybe this is something that we can also discuss on our webinar. So we take that away. And there's a question from ANOC. When integrating your social media activities with your mainstream media activities, is there one particular channel to use or a combination of channels to ensure you get the attention and engagement?
That's a good question. I'll take a top line answer to that. The more, and this is based on marketing, evidence, the more channels you use, the more effective usually a campaign will be. That's a top line. Again, so we would recommend a combination of channels to ensure you get their attention and engagement. If you're talking about a larger campaign activity, that'd be probably our answer to that.
Good. We have time for a few more questions. So one is from ANOC Sri Lanka. Is it okay to share all the contents on all media, or some are suitable only to Facebook, some are only for Instagram, etc.? Can you advise on how to differentiate the contents when posting various social media?
So I'm just gonna. I know we have got a list of these questions. So that was from
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lankan. Yeah. Okay. So I think I'll pass this one over to maybe Emma, as you do a lot of the planning of social media.
Yeah, fine. So it does really depend on your content, but also your specific audiences and your resources. So, if you haven't got much content available or much resources, then yes, I would say use as much content as you can across all platforms, because as Chris mentioned, it's best to have a presence across multiple platforms, but they do all need regular content. So even if something isn't 100% direct for that platform, if you've had a gap in content for a while, I would say to use that. For example, though, if you had like a specific really long video, it was a hero piece of video that you'd created exactly for YouTube, then obviously that wouldn't be suitable for Instagram or Twitter. And so again, it would be repurposing that. But in terms of differentiating between the content, it's looking back at how your content performs. So that goes back to what Ollie was saying, and running a content audit, really learning the behaviors of your audiences on the individual platforms. And very quickly, once you run a few tests or you have posted everything across multiple channels, you'll soon pick up and see which works best for what audience on what platform.
Perfect. We are almost on time, so I just do one last question. Apologies for the additional questions, but we promise to take them away and come back to you. So this last one, it was interesting to hear that emotions are a safe bet for successful posts. The Olympic Games are a never-ending source of emotions on the victory, but also on the losses, on victorious and glorious performances, but also on the stories of overcoming your limits and doing your best. The NOCs have the strategic position during the games, being able to share behind the scenes stories, like how nervous the athletes are before their final day. Which recommendations could give the NOCs to take most advantage of this while they are in Tokyo?
So what I'll do with that, I'll probably pass that over to start with Matt. Matt, do you want to take that question?
Yes, please. So I think this is a really great question. And it really taps into what we were discussing earlier about building the profile of your athletes so that fans can get to know them as humans. If they believe that they are superhumans who feel no nerves, it's harder to empathize with them. But if we understand what challenges they face, then it makes us want to support them all the more, which will increase engagement during the Olympics. So I think telling those stories of your athletes and the challenges they face in the build up to the Olympics and during the Olympics is key. And you might want to tell these stories from the point of view of the athlete, because then the athlete, then their story is more authentic, because the story will come direct from the athlete rather than from your NOC. And you can do this in many ways. It could be a pre-recorded film. It could be a quote card from it could be an Instagram takeover. It could be a Q&A held on Twitter and Facebook. There's lots of ways to do it, but I think allowing your athletes to tell their story either on your channels or on theirs, and then you share their content is the best way to increase engagement around that feeling of emotions before and during the Olympics.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And with that, we conclude our session of questions and answers. And I would like to thank all the 4 speakers of today's workshop for sharing their extensive knowledge. I am sure the audience is going to be able to take home a lot of what has been discussed today and analyze what can be already put in place in Japan in the coming 2 months, and what will still need further preparation. Here's an interesting quote from one of our Redtorch colleagues here today. If your content isn't built for objectives, then it's not a strategy, it's just content. So we need to create the content that enables our organizations to reach strategic goals. As we saw in the presentation, it's really important to align your social media messages with your own NOC marketing plan and clearly determine your goals, short-term and long-term. Understand your audience, do some research to show what they're looking for. Plan, organize and facilitate your own lives. The posts have to look good. If you do not have one, invest on an NOC branding guidelines that will show a positive message of professionalism and quality. And remember, the posts are building your own NOC's image to the world. The path ahead might look challenging and steep, but the outcome and potential results are really key for your NOC, with social media as an enabler for the organization to reach its strategic goals. We remind you to use the ANOC social media dashboard on the ANOC website to analyze your numbers, establish goals, and measure your performance. And also to use the ANOC handbook, which was mentioned several times during today's presentations, which contains a lot of what has been discussed. And the Spanish and French versions of the handbook will be released in the coming weeks. To allow a deeper interaction between the NOCs, ANOC will create a LinkedIn group, and we're going to invite all the participants on this workshop to join in order to exchange experiences and best practices. We hope this will also help facilitate a deeper interaction and exchange between the NOCs. And ANOC would like to invite you to the first social media webinar, which is going to be on June 29th. Yes, our last event before Tokyo 2020. As it's here on the screen, NOC Brazil will be our invited NOC to speak, and they'll be sharing their social media operations as a source of content for Tokyo 2020, and also how their operations will have to be adjusted with the new games reality. And this will be a more flexible social platform for discussions. It's going to be more open camera, a very relaxed ambience, so we can all chat and discuss and exchange. I would like to drop a thank you message for all the interpreters here who helped us to deliver this activity. and also the ANOC team on the back office, Andres, Emily, Aude, and Mikael. And lastly, thank you all for joining us in this event. And we hope that this has a positive impact for your NOCs. Chris, if you want to give a last words.
Yeah, as I said at the start, it's a great privilege for us to be here, invited by ANOC to speak to everyone. So yes, thank you for listening through that. And some of it was quite dry but important. And we wish you all the best of luck leading up to Tokyo and every success there. So thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot to all the speakers, and thanks everyone to join. Best of luck in Tokyo. We wish you all the success.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you next time.